Blood-red rays of sunset blazed across the horizon as Delilah Lambert stepped off the stagecoach into the dust-choked streets of Jordan Valley, Oregon. In the summer of 1875, a single valise clutched in her trembling hand, and a letter promising employment that would soon prove to be the cruelest of lies. The journey from Pennsylvania had been grueling, but Delilah had endured every jostling mile with the quiet determination that had defined her 22 years of life. Her parents' farm had been lost to debt after her father's passing, and her mother had followed him to the grave shortly thereafter, leaving Delilah alone in the world with nothing but her education and the desperate need to forge a new path. The letter had arrived like salvation and offer to teach at a newly established school in Jordan Valley, a burgeoning settlement in Oregon's cattle country. The promised salary had been modest but sufficient, and the prospect of a small house of her own had sealed Delilah's decision to travel west. Now, as she surveyed the main street with its weathered buildings and the thick scent of cattle and dust hanging in the air, Delilah fought against a rising sense of unease. Jordan Valley was smaller than she had anticipated, rougher around the edges, with none of the civilized touches she had hoped to find. Miss Lambert, a corpulent man with a florid face, approached, his smile revealing tobacco-stained teeth beneath a waxed mustache. "Walter Pritchard at your service. I own the Golden Spur Saloon." He gestured to a large two-story building across the street, its painted facade garish against the muted colors of the surrounding structures. "I sent for you." Delilah frowned, confusion creasing her brow. "There must be some mistake, Mr. Pritchard. I was hired by the town council to teach at the school." Pritchard's laugh was sudden and harsh. "School? Jordan Valley's got no school, miss. Not yet, anyway." He reached for her valise. "Come along now, I've arranged accommodations for you." Delilah stepped back, clutching her bag tighter. "If there's no school, then why was I offered a teaching position?" The saloon owner's expression hardened, the false joviality draining away. "Look around you, Miss Lambert. This is cattle country. Men outnumber women 20 to 1. A pretty face like yours is worth its weight in gold out here." He lowered his voice. "I need entertainment for my establishment, singing, perhaps some dancing. Nothing improper, of course." At first, horror bloomed in Delilah's chest as the truth became clear. The teaching position had never existed. It had been nothing more than bait to lure a respectable young woman to this remote outpost. She had spent nearly every cent she possessed on the journey west, believing she was traveling toward opportunity and independence. "This is outrageous," she hissed, backing away. "I will not work in your saloon, Mr. Pritchard. I am a teacher, not a—" "You'll find your options limited, Miss Lambert." Pritchard's tone remained conversational, but his eyes had gone cold. "The next stage coach doesn't come through for 2 weeks. The hotel costs $2 a night. How much money do you have left after your journey?" Delilah said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. She had less than $5 to her name. "I thought as much." Pritchard reached for her arm. "Now be reasonable. I'm offering you employment, room and board. Many women would be grateful." "Unhand me," Delilah demanded, jerking away from his grasp. "I'll find other arrangements in Jordan Valley." Pritchard laughed again. "Good luck, Miss Lambert. When you come to your senses, you know where to find me." He tipped his hat mockingly before sauntering back toward the saloon, leaving Delilah alone on the dusty street as the last rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the distant mountains. For 3 days, Delilah sought honest work in the tiny settlement. She inquired at the general store, the small hotel, even the livery stable, but found no opportunities. The townspeople were polite but unhelpful, many casting pitying glances her way. It became apparent that Pritchard wielded considerable influence in Jordan Valley, No one was willing to cross him by offering her employment. Her meager funds dwindled rapidly. On the fourth morning, the hotel proprietor regretfully informed her that she could no longer extend credit. By noon, Delilah found herself seated on a bench outside the general store, her valise at her feet, hunger gnawing at her stomach. "Miss Lambert." Pritchard's voice startled her. He stood before her, immaculately dressed despite the heat, twirling his walking stick. "I trust you've reconsidered my offer." Delilah lifted her chin, summoning what dignity remained. "I have not, Mr. Pritchard, nor will I. Pride is a luxury you can't afford." He gestured to her valise. "You've been evicted from the hotel. You haven't eaten since yesterday. What exactly is your plan?" When she remained silent, he sighed theatrically. "I'm a businessman, not a monster. You'll have your own room above the saloon. All I ask is that you sing a few songs each evening. Your looks will improve business. If you prove amenable, perhaps we can discuss more lucrative arrangements later." "I will not become one of your girls," Delilah said firmly. "Then don't." Pritchard shrugged. "Sing, pour drinks, that's all I'm asking for now." He extended his hand. "Come along, Miss Lambert, before hunger makes the decision for you." With a leaden heart, Delilah allowed him to help her to her feet. What choice did she have? She would take his offer of shelter and food, but she would find a way out of this predicament. The stagecoach would return in 10 days. Perhaps she could save enough to purchase a ticket back east. The Golden Spur Saloon was mercifully quiet in the afternoon hours. Pritchard led her through the main room with its long bar and scattered tables to a narrow staircase at the rear. The second floor consisted of a corridor with several doors, the rooms where Pritchard's girls entertained their customers. Delilah presumed with distaste. "This will be yours," Pritchard said, unlocking the last door. The room was small but clean, containing a narrow bed, a washstand, and a battered dresser. A single window overlooked the street. "Get settled. Come down at 6. Maggie will help you prepare." "Prepare for what?" Delilah asked warily. "For your debut, of course." Pritchard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Jordan Valley's been waiting for a refined lady like yourself. They'll pay good money to hear you sing." Before she could protest that she had never agreed to perform that very evening, he closed the door. Delilah rushed to turn the lock, only to discover there wasn't one. Panic fluttered in her chest as she realized just how vulnerable her position was. The hours passed in anxious contemplation. At 5:30, a knock at the door heralded the arrival of Maggie, a world-weary woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a practical manner. She carried a dress of emerald green satin that made Delilah gasp in dismay. "Mr. Pritchard sent this for you to wear tonight," Maggie explained, laying the garment across the bed. "It's indecent," Delilah objected, noting the low neckline. "It's tame compared to what the other girls wear," Maggie replied with a shrug. "Listen, honey, I know this isn't what you wanted. But Pritchard gets what Pritchard wants in this town if you don't cooperate." She didn't finish the sentence. "If I don't cooperate, what?" Delilah demanded. Maggie sighed. "Just put on the dress, sing a few songs, it won't kill you." With Maggie's assistance, Delilah reluctantly donned the green gown and allowed her hair to be arranged in loose curls. The woman applied rouge to Delilah's cheeks and lips, despite her protests. When Maggie held up a hand mirror, Delilah hardly recognized her own reflection. "Perfect," Maggie declared. "You'll bring in quite a crowd." Downstairs, the saloon was filling with men ranchers, cowboys, and townspeople, all curious about the new attraction Pritchard had been promising. Their conversations fell into an expectant hush when Delilah descended the stairs, her cheeks burning with humiliation beneath the rouge. Pritchard met her at the bottom step, his appraising gaze making her skin crawl. "Magnificent," he murmured. "Gentlemen," May I present Miss Delilah Lambert, lately of Pennsylvania, who has graciously agreed to favor us with a few songs this evening." The piano player, a thin man with nimble fingers, despite his apparent intoxication, struck up a familiar tune. Delilah, finding her voice through sheer determination, began to sing. She chose hymns and folk songs, steadfastly refusing the bawdier suggestions called out by the increasingly rowdy patrons. For 2 hours she performed, growing more weary and disheartened with each song. The men continued to drink, their behavior becoming more boisterous. When one particularly bold cowboy attempted to pull her into his lap, Delilah slapped him soundly across the face. The room fell silent. Pritchard appeared at her side instantly, his fingers digging into her arm. "A word, Miss Lambert," he said through gritted teeth, dragging her toward a door behind the bar. "You ungrateful little," he snarled once they were alone in what appeared to be his office. "Do you have any idea how much money you could cost me with that kind of behavior?" "I will not be manhandled by your customers," Delilah retorted, rubbing her arm where his fingers had left marks. "You'll be whatever I say you'll be," Pritchard shouted, his face purpling with rage. "I've invested in you, girl, brought you west, given you shelter, clothing." He gestured wildly at the green dress. "And how do you repay me?" "By insulting my best customers." "I never asked for any of this," Delilah replied, backing toward the door. "You lured me here under false pretenses." Pritchard advanced on her, his bulk forcing her against the wall. "You have 2 choices, Miss Lambert. You can be a cooperative, profitable employee, or you can be dealt with as a thief." "A thief?" she echoed incredulously. "I've stolen nothing from you." "That dress you're wearing costs more than you'll earn in a month," he said coldly. "The food you've eaten, the room you've occupied, all provided on credit. Credit you've failed to honor through your work." He reached into a drawer and withdrew a document. "This is a contract stating you owe me $200 for transportation costs and expenses. I'll have you sign it now." "I will do no such thing," Delilah gasped, appalled at the sum far more than her journey had actually cost. Pritchard's face contorted with fury. "Then perhaps a night in the cellar will change your mind." Before she could react, he seized her by the arms and dragged her toward another door. Despite her struggles, his strength overwhelmed her. The door opened to reveal a steep staircase descending into darkness. With a vicious shove, he sent her tumbling down the steps. Delilah cried out as she fell, pain exploding through her body as she struck the hard, packed earth at the bottom. Above her, the door slammed shut, plunging her into complete darkness. "Consider your options, Miss Lambert," Pritchard's voice called down. "I'll return in the morning for your decision." The sound of a heavy bolt sliding into place confirmed her imprisonment. Delilah dragged herself to her feet, wincing at the pain in her shoulder and hip. Blindly, she felt her way around the cellar, discovering barrels of whiskey, crates of supplies, and damp stone walls. There was no other exit, no window to provide light or hope of escape. In the oppressive darkness, Delilah finally allowed her tears to fall. She had been a fool to trust the letter, to journey west with such naivete. Now she was trapped, with no money and no allies, at the mercy of a man who viewed her as nothing more than property to be exploited. Hours passed in the cold darkness. Delilah huddled against a wall, her thin dress providing little protection against the cellar's chill. Eventually, exhaustion overcame her fear, and she drifted into a fitful sleep haunted by dreams of her lost home and the parents who could no longer protect her. She awoke to the sound of voices raised in argument above her head. The cellar door remained shut, but light seeped through the cracks, suggesting it was morning. "Where is she, Pritchard?" A man's voice, deep and commanding, penetrated the heavy wood. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mercer." Pritchard's tone was defensive. The woman who arrived on Tuesday's stage. Miss Lambert. Martha at the hotel says she came here yesterday and hasn't been seen since. Delilah scrambled to her feet, hope surging through her veins. "Help!" she shouted, her voice echoing in the confined space. "I'm down here." Silence fell above her, followed by the sound of a scuffle. "You locked her in your cellar." The man Mercer sounded dangerous now. "Open that door, Pritchard. Now." "This is my establishment," Pritchard blustered. "I'll handle my employees as I see fit." "She's not your employee. She's a free woman you've imprisoned." Something in Mercer's tone sent a chill down Delilah's spine, not of fear, but of anticipation. "Last chance. Open the door." "Get out of my saloon, Mercer, before I have you arrested for trespassing." The next sound was a tremendous crash, followed by splintering wood. Light suddenly flooded the stairwell as the cellar door was kicked open with such force that it tore from its hinges. "Miss Lambert." The man called down. "I'm here," Delilah replied, shielding her eyes against the sudden brightness. Boots thundered down the stairs, and then he stood before her, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His dark blonde hair curled beneath the brim of his hat, and several days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his gaze sweeping over her, cataloging the dirt on the green dress, the dried blood on her palm where she had scraped it during her fall. "Nothing serious," Delilah managed, suddenly conscious of her disheveled appearance. Without another word, the stranger swept her into his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. Delilah gasped, instinctively wrapping her arms around his neck as he carried her up the stairs. In the office, Pritchard lay sprawled on the floor, blood trickling from his nose, glaring impotently at them. Several of the saloon's patrons had gathered, drawn by the commotion. "This woman is leaving with me," Mercer announced, his voice ringing with authority. "Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally." No one spoke. No one moved to stop them as he strode through the saloon and out into the morning sunlight, still carrying Delilah in his powerful arms. "I can walk," she protested weakly, though the solid warmth of him felt inexplicably safe after her night of terror. "I know," he replied simply, but did not put her down until they reached a modest house at the edge of town. Only then did he gently set her on her feet, steadying her with a hand at her elbow. "I'm Adam Mercer," he said, "deputy marshal for this county, and you're in a hell of a situation, Miss Lambert." Adam Mercer had known trouble was brewing from the moment he spotted Walter Pritchard meeting the stagecoach on Tuesday. The saloon owner rarely showed such personal interest in new arrivals unless he stood to profit handsomely. When Adam had inquired about the young woman and learned she believed she'd been hired as a teacher, his suspicions had deepened. Jordan Valley had been discussing establishing a school for months, but no funds had been allocated, no teacher hired. He'd watched from a distance over the next few days as Delilah Lambert sought employment throughout the town, noting the way doors closed in her face after brief, apologetic conversations. Pritchard's influence at work, no doubt. By the time she had disappeared into the Golden Spur Saloon, Adam had been sufficiently concerned to make inquiries at the hotel. Now, as he guided the exhausted woman into his home, he was grateful he had followed his instincts. She looked ready to collapse, her face pale beneath smudged rouge, her eyes shadowed by the trauma of her imprisonment. "Sit, please," he said, gesturing to a worn but comfortable chair near the stove. "I'll make coffee." Delilah sank gratefully into the seat, her gaze traveling around the simple, clean room that served as kitchen and living area. "Thank you for your intervention, Deputy Mercer," she said, her voice steadier than he had expected. "I fear I've made a terrible mistake in coming to Jordan Valley." Adam busied himself with the coffee pot, giving her a moment to collect herself. "The mistake wasn't yours, Miss Lambert. Pritchard's been pulling this scheme for years, luring respectable women west with promises of legitimate employment, then forcing them into his saloon. Most eventually end up working upstairs." He glanced at her. "It's despicable, but he's careful to operate just within the boundaries of the law, until now." "False imprisonment is against the law, I presume?" Delilah asked, a hint of steel entering her tone. "Very much so." Adam set a steaming cup before her. "Would you be willing to file charges?" Delilah's fingers wrapped around the warm cup. "What would happen then? Pritchard would be arrested. There would be a trial." Adam sat across from her. "But I should warn you, his influence runs deep. He owns the mortgage on half the businesses in town, including Judge Parker's home, and trials can drag on for months. During which time I would be stranded here," Delilah concluded, her shoulders slumping, "with no means of support and a powerful enemy. There is another option." Adam hesitated, then continued. "The eastbound stage leaves tomorrow morning. It would take you to Boise, where you could find passage back to Pennsylvania if that's your wish." "Go home." Delilah's laugh held no humor. "There is no home to return to, deputy. My parents are dead, the farm sold to cover debts." She stared into her coffee. "I came west because I had nothing left in the east. Then we find you a legitimate position somewhere else," Adam suggested. "Boise is growing rapidly. They have real schools, libraries. A lady with your education would be welcomed." Delilah regarded him with surprise. "How do you know I'm educated?" A faint flush colored Adam's cheekbones. "I may have asked about you at the hotel. Martha mentioned you were reading Emerson. You've been watching me." It wasn't a question. "Keeping an eye on a situation I found concerning," Adam corrected. "Pritchard's reputation is well known to me, even if the townspeople turn a blind eye to his activities." Delilah sipped her coffee, studying him over the rim of the cup. Deputy Adam Mercer was unlike any lawman she had encountered back east. Those had been older men with paunches and self-importance. This man radiated quiet competence and a physical power that he kept carefully restrained. Despite her ordeal, or perhaps because of it, she found his presence reassuring rather than intimidating. "Why did you come for me?" she asked suddenly. "You could have ignored my disappearance like everyone else in this town." Adam's blue eyes met hers directly. "Because it was right," he said simply, "and because no one else would." The honesty in his gaze made Delilah look away first. "What happens now? Now you rest." Adam rose. "The bedroom is through there. I'll bring water so you can wash. Later, we'll discuss your options more thoroughly." Delilah wanted to protest. She had imposed on his kindness enough, but exhaustion overwhelmed her. "Thank you," she managed, "for everything." In the small bedroom, Delilah found a basin of warm water and a clean shirt laid out for her use. The garment would swallow her whole, but it was infinitely preferable to the tawdry green dress that now symbolized her humiliation. She washed away the dirt and rouge, wincing at the bruises blooming on her shoulder and hip, then changed into the offered shirt. It hung to her knees like a nightgown, the sleeves rolled up multiple times to free her hands. The narrow bed, though simply furnished with a quilt and a single pillow, seemed like the height of luxury after her night in the cellar. Delilah sank onto it gratefully, intending only to rest for a moment before returning to the kitchen to discuss her future. She awoke hours later to find afternoon sunlight slanting through the window. For a disorienting moment, she didn't recognize her surroundings. Then memory returned in a rush. Pritchard, the cellar, the deputy marshal breaking down the door and carrying her to safety. Voices murmured in the other room. Delilah rose and moved to the door, which stood slightly ajar. "Ought to hang for what he's done," a woman was saying. luring that poor girl all the way from Pennsylvania with lies. We both know that won't happen, Martha. Adam's voice was resigned. Pritchard owns too many people in this town. Not you, the woman Martha replied firmly. No, Adam agreed. Never me. What will she do now? That's for her to decide. I can get her to Boys safely, help her find a teaching position there if she wants. And if she doesn't want to leave, Martha asked shrewdly. Jordan Valley could use a teacher of its own, Adam. You've said so yourself. The town council won't establish a school just to create a job for her, Adam pointed out. They've been dragging their feet on that project for years. Then create the position another way, Martha suggested. Heaven knows there's a need. My Henry barely knows his letters, and he's already 8. Delilah pushed the door open wider, making her presence known. The conversation ceased as both Adam and a sturdy middle-aged woman turned toward her. Miss Lambert, Adam said, rising to his feet. I hope we didn't wake you. Not at all. Delilah smoothed her hair self-consciously, aware of her appearance in the borrowed shirt. I've imposed on your hospitality long enough. You should eat, Martha interrupted, bustling forward. I'm Martha Wilkins from the hotel. Brought you some clean clothes that might fit better than the deputy's shirt, though it looks charming on you. She winked at Adam, whose ears reddened slightly. And there's stew on the stove. Sit yourself down. Too taken aback to argue, Delilah allowed herself to be guided to the table, where a bowl of fragrant stew appeared before her. Martha produced a bundle of clothing, simple but respectable garments that would suit a working woman. These belonged to my sister before she moved to California, Martha explained. She was about your size. They're yours if you want them. That's very kind, Delilah said, touched by the gesture. But I couldn't possibly. You can and you will, Martha interrupted firmly. Consider it this town's way of apologizing for Pritchard's behavior. Not all of us turn a blind eye to his dealings, whatever the deputy might think. She cast a reproving glance at Adam. I stand corrected, he said, raising his hands in surrender. Some of the townspeople have more backbone than I gave them credit for. Humph. Martha turned back to Delilah. Now, eat your stew, then get dressed. The deputy and I have been discussing your situation. We have a proposition for you. Delilah obediently took a spoonful of the stew, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. What sort of proposition? Adam leaned against the counter, arms folded across his broad chest. Jordan Valley needs a school, he said. The children here are growing up without proper education because the town council keeps postponing the project. But you're a qualified teacher, Martha continued eagerly. If enough families committed to paying tuition, you could start teaching right away without waiting for official approval. Where? Delilah asked, intrigued despite herself. There's no school building. My late husband's workshop stands empty, Martha offered. It's sound, weathertight, plenty big enough for a dozen students. With a little cleaning and some benches, it would serve until something better could be arranged. Delilah's mind raced with possibilities. Despite everything, the idea of leaving Jordan Valley felt like admitting defeat, and she had come west to teach after all. How many children are there in the valley? At least 15 of school age within riding distance, Martha said promptly. More if you count the outlying ranches. It won't be easy, Adam cautioned. Pritchard won't take kindly to you staying in town. And frontier children aren't always eager students. No child is at first, Delilah replied, warming to the challenge. But every child deserves the opportunity to learn. She hesitated. Where would I live? I can't impose on Deputy Mercer indefinitely. There's a small room behind the workshop, Martha said. Simple but private. It has its own entrance. You take your meals at the hotel on the house, she added hastily when Delilah began to protest. At least until tuition payments start coming in. Delilah looked from Martha's eager face to Adam's more reserved expression. Why are you both doing this for me? You barely know me. I know enough, Martha declared. You're educated proper and you stood up to Walter Pritchard. That's recommendation enough for me. Adam's response was more measured. Jordan Valley is a rough place, but it could be better. Children who can read and write might make different choices than their parents, might build something worthwhile here. His gaze held Delilah's steadily. And I believe in giving people second chances. This town gave me one. The simple statement carried weight, hinting at a history Delilah suddenly wanted to understand. But before she could inquire further, Martha was bustling about, gathering up the clothing. You think about it while you change, the older woman advised. There's no rush to decide. But if you're staying, we should get you settled in the workshop before dark. In the bedroom, Delilah removed Adam's shirt and donned the offered clothes, a plain blue skirt and white shirtwaist that fit surprisingly well, along with practical undergarments. The familiar routine of dressing helped organize her thoughts. She had come west with dreams of independence, of making a difference in children's lives. Pritchard had nearly destroyed those dreams, but now she was being offered an unexpected opportunity to fulfill them. It would be difficult, certainly. The town's loyalty to Pritchard, the challenge of establishing a school without official support, the hardships of frontier life, none of these could be underestimated. Yet the alternative was to retreat, to allow fear to dictate her future. That was not the woman her parents had raised her to be. When Delilah emerged from the bedroom, her decision was made. I'll stay, she announced. If you truly believe enough families will support a school. Martha beamed in triumph. They will. You leave that to me. Adam's expression was more complex approval mixed with concern. Pritchard won't make this easy for you, he warned. I don't expect him to, Delilah replied, lifting her chin. But I didn't travel 2,000 miles to be driven away by a bully. She extended her hand formally. Thank you for your rescue, Deputy Mercer, and for giving me the chance to fulfill my purpose here. His large hand enveloped hers, warm and calloused. Adam, he corrected quietly. If you're staying in Jordan Valley, we might as well use first names. Adam, Delilah repeated, oddly aware of how his hand lingered on hers for a moment longer than necessary. I have a feeling I'll be grateful for your friendship in the days ahead. Count on it, he promised, and somehow she knew she could. Martha's workshop proved to be a sturdy structure of rough-hewn timber, its interior still redolent of sawdust and varnish. The main space was open and well lit by windows set high in the walls. A pot-bellied stove stood in one corner, adequate for heating the room in winter. The small chamber at the back, once an office, would serve as Delilah's living quarters. It contained a narrow bed, a table and chair, and a washstand. A door opened directly to the outside, giving her privacy and independence. It's perfect, Delilah declared, turning to Martha with genuine enthusiasm. With some cleaning and a few benches, this will make an excellent schoolroom. My Henry can help with the benches, Martha offered. He's handy with tools even if his reading needs work. Adam, who had accompanied them to inspect the workshop, walked the perimeter of the room with a critical eye. The lock on this door needs replacing, he noted, and those windows should have shutters that can be secured from inside. Delilah understood his concern. If Pritchard decided to interfere with her plans, he might not limit himself to legal channels. Can such improvements be made quickly? I'll see to it myself, Adam assured her, and I'll keep a closer watch on this part of town. Deputy Mercer is very thorough about his patrols, Martha remarked with a sidelong glance that made Delilah blush inexplicably. Now, let's get you settled. Adam, be a dear and fetch Miss Lambert's valise from the hotel, would you?" As Adam departed on this errand, Martha bustled about, producing clean linens for the bed and a small basket of provisions. "Just to tide you over," she explained. "You'll take breakfast and supper at the hotel, but I thought you might want something for midday." "You've thought of everything," Delilah said gratefully. "Not everything, dear." Martha's expression grew serious. "You should know that not everyone will welcome a school. Some folks here prefer things as they are, rough, simple. Education changes things, and change frightens people." "Is that why the town council has delayed establishing a school?" Delilah asked. Martha nodded. "Partly. Some genuinely can't see the value in book learning for ranch children. Others—" she hesitated. "Others follow Pritchard's lead because they're in his debt one way or another." "And the deputy? Where does he stand in all this?" "Adam," Martha's eyes softened. "He stands apart mostly, keeps his own counsel. But he's a good man, educated himself, though he doesn't make a show of it. Came here 5 years ago from somewhere back east. Never talks about his past, but I gather it wasn't happy." She patted Delilah's arm. "He'll be your ally in this, don't you worry." By evening, the workshop had been transformed into a simple but comfortable living space. Adam had returned with Delilah's valise, replaced the lock on the main door, and promised to install shutters the following day. Martha had spread the word about the new school, assuring Delilah that several families had already expressed interest. "We'll hold a meeting here tomorrow afternoon," Martha declared. "Let parents see the space, meet you properly. Once they understand you're qualified and serious, they'll commit to tuition payments." After Martha had departed, Adam lingered, seemingly reluctant to leave Delilah alone on her first night in her new home. "I live just down the street," he said, pointing to his small house visible through the gathering dusk. "If you need anything, if there's any trouble, don't hesitate to call for me." "Thank you," Delilah said, touched by his concern, "but I'll be fine. The door is secure thanks to you." Adam nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "Pritchard knows you're staying. News travels fast in Jordan Valley. He'll make his next move soon." "Let him try," Delilah replied with more confidence than she felt. "I won't be intimidated again." A hint of admiration flickered in Adam's eyes. "No, I don't believe you will be." He settled his hat on his head. "Good night, Miss Lambert. Delilah," he amended with a small smile. "Good night, Adam," she replied, watching as he strode away through the deepening twilight. Alone at last, Delilah secured the door and prepared for bed, her mind buzzing with plans for the school, with the challenges ahead, and, unbidden, with thoughts of the deputy marshal whose steady presence had become her anchor in this turbulent new world. The parents' meeting the following afternoon exceeded Delilah's most optimistic expectations. 12 families attended, representing 17 children ranging in age from 6 to 15. Martha had worked miracles, transforming the workshop into a presentable classroom with borrowed benches, a blackboard, and even a small bookshelf stocked with basic primers, and a few well-worn novels donated by various townspeople. Delilah addressed the assembled parents with the confidence born of her training and genuine passion for education. She outlined her qualifications, her teaching philosophy, and her proposed curriculum, which would include reading, writing, arithmetic, history, geography, and basic sciences. "My aim is to provide your children with the tools they need to succeed, whether they choose to remain in Jordan Valley or seek opportunities elsewhere," she explained. "Education opens doors that might otherwise remain closed." Most of the parents responded positively, especially the mothers, who seemed to grasp the value of education more readily than their husbands. By the end of the meeting, Delilah had secured commitments from 10 families, enough to provide her with a modest living once tuition payments began coming in. "I told you they'd support you," Martha crowed as the last family departed. "We'll have those benches properly built by the end of the week. You can start classes on Monday." "It's happening rather faster than I anticipated," Delilah admitted, slightly dazed by the swift turn of events. "That's how things work out here," Adam commented from his position near the door, where he had observed the entire proceedings. "When folks decide to do something, they don't waste time with committees and deliberations." His presence had been a comfort throughout the meeting, a silent reminder that she had allies in her new venture. Several times she had caught his eye and found encouragement there, warming her resolve when faced with skeptical questions from some of the fathers. "Did you notice who wasn't here?" Martha asked in a lower voice, glancing toward the door to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "The Millards, the Hendersons, and the Fosters," Adam supplied. "All businesses that owe Pritchard money." "He's already applying pressure," Delilah realized, her heart sinking slightly, "trying to undermine the school before it even begins." "Don't let it trouble you," Martha advised. 10 families is a fine start. Others will join once they see the benefits for themselves. The next few days passed in a blur of activity as Delilah prepared for her first day of classes. Adam completed the promised shutters and built a sturdy bookcase. Martha's son Henry and several other young men constructed proper benches with attached writing surfaces. The women of Jordan Valley contributed slates, chalk, pencils, and paper, precious commodities on the frontier. Through it all, Delilah was aware of being watched. Pritchard himself never approached her, but his influence was evident in the sidelong glances from certain townspeople, in the way conversations sometimes halted when she entered the general store, in the occasional muttered comment about Eastern notions being unsuited to frontier children. On Sunday evening, as Delilah made final preparations for her first day of teaching, a knock at the workshop door startled her. She opened it to find Adam standing there, hat in hand, more formally dressed than she had yet seen him. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said. "I wanted to wish you luck for tomorrow." "Thank you," Delilah smiled, gesturing for him to enter. "I'm as ready as I can be, I think." Adam stepped inside, his tall frame making the schoolroom seem suddenly smaller. He carried a small package wrapped in brown paper. "I brought you something. A small token for your first day." Surprised and touched, Delilah accepted the package and carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a handsome brass bell, its surface gleaming in the lamplight. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely, running her fingers over the smooth metal. "Every school needs a bell," Adam replied, a hint of shyness in his manner that she found unexpectedly endearing. "To call the students in from recess, to mark the beginning and end of the day." "It's perfect," Delilah assured him, giving the bell an experimental ring. Its clear tone resonated through the room. "Thank you, Adam, for this, and for everything you've done to help make this school possible." His blue eyes held hers. "I believe in what you're trying to do here," he said quietly. "These children deserve a chance at something better." There was something in his tone, a personal note that made Delilah wonder again about his past. "Did you have the opportunity for education as a child?" she asked carefully. A shadow crossed his face. "My father insisted on it. He had plans for me to follow him into law." Adam looked away. Things didn't work out as he intended. Delilah sensed the pain behind the simple statement. "Yet you found your own path," she observed. "As deputy marshal, you serve the community in a different way." "I try," he acknowledged. He seemed about to say more, but instead glanced toward the door. "I should let you rest. Tomorrow will be a demanding day." "Will I see you?" The question slipped out before Delilah could consider how it might sound. Adam's expression softened. I'll be around. Part of my duty is to check on all the businesses in town." A hint of humor touched his lips. "The school now qualifies." After he had gone, Delilah found herself standing in the middle of the schoolroom, the bell still in her hand, filled with an anticipation that had as much to do with the deputy's promise to return as with the challenge of her first day of teaching. The Jordan Valley School opened on Monday, September 13, 1875, with 15 students in attendance, 2 more than expected, as word had spread over the weekend. Delilah rang Adam's bell at precisely 8 o'clock, feeling a surge of pride as the children lined up outside the workshop door, faces scrubbed and hair slicked down, clutching their slates and primers with varying degrees of enthusiasm. The day was both exhausting and exhilarating. The range of ages and abilities presented an immediate challenge, requiring Delilah to organize the students into groups and alternate her attention between them. The older boys initially tested her authority with whispered comments and feigned ignorance, but Delilah's firm yet kind approach soon won their grudging respect. By mid-afternoon, when she rang the bell to dismiss the class, Delilah felt she had made a solid beginning. The children departed with assignments to complete at home, simple exercises for the youngest, more substantial reading for the older students. Several mothers waited outside to hear reports of their children's first day, their genuine interest confirming Martha's assertion that education was valued by many in the community. Delilah was straightening the classroom, mentally reviewing the day's successes and challenges, when the door opened without a preliminary knock. Walter Pritchard stood on the threshold, his bulky frame blocking the light. "Miss Lambert," he said, removing his hat with a mockery of politeness. "I see you've established yourself in our little community." Delilah's heart hammered in her chest, but she refused to show fear. "Mr. Pritchard," she acknowledged coolly, "this is a school. Unless you have children to enroll, I'm afraid I must ask you to leave." Pritchard stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "So hostile," he chided. "And after I went to the trouble of bringing you all the way from Pennsylvania." "Under false pretenses," Delilah reminded him, maintaining her position behind the teacher's desk. "I believe we have nothing further to discuss. On the contrary." Pritchard advanced slowly into the room. "We have a great deal to discuss, starting with the debt you owe me." "I owe you nothing," Delilah stated firmly. "Any agreement between us was invalidated by your deception and subsequent actions." Pritchard's face darkened. "You're occupying this building illegally," he said, abruptly changing tactics. "The town council hasn't authorized a school. This is private property, generously loaned by Mrs. Wilkins for educational purposes," Delilah countered. "No authorization is required for private instruction." "Mrs. Wilkins should be careful about crossing me," Pritchard warned. "Her hotel mortgage comes due for renewal soon." He glanced around the schoolroom with contempt. "This little venture of yours won't last, Miss Lambert. Jordan Valley doesn't need or want your kind of refinement. The children here are destined for ranching, for hard physical labor. What use are books to a cowboy or a rancher's wife?" "Education benefits everyone, Mr. Pritchard," Delilah replied, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "Even those destined for ranch work need to read contracts, calculate expenses, write letters." "Pretty words," Pritchard sneered. "But I control this town, Miss Lambert. The businesses, the bank, even that so-called deputy marshal who's been hovering around you. One word from me, and your students will disappear. Their parents will find urgent reasons why schooling isn't practical after all." "Is that a threat?" Delilah demanded. "A prediction," Pritchard corrected with a cold smile. "Unless we can come to an arrangement." Delilah's stomach clenched. "What sort of arrangement?" I still need entertainment at the Golden Spur, Pritchard said silkily. Singing 2 nights a week. In return, I'll allow your little school to continue unmolested. Absolutely not, Delilah replied without hesitation. I am a teacher, not a saloon performer. Pritchard shrugged, turning toward the door. Then I hope you enjoy teaching to empty benches, Miss Lambert. Because that's what you'll have by the end of the week. His hand was on the doorknob when he added, Oh, and you might want to ask your friend Mercer about his past, about why he left Boston in such a hurry. You might find his protection less comforting once you know the truth. The door closed behind him, leaving Delilah shaken by both his threats and the cryptic reference to Adam's history. She was still standing frozen behind her desk when the door opened again minutes later. Delilah. Adam's concerned voice broke through her distress. I saw Pritchard leaving. Are you all right? She looked up, studying his face, the open concern in his blue eyes, the slight furrow between his brows. Whatever secrets lay in his past, she could not believe this man meant her harm. He threatened to destroy the school, she said simply. To use his influence to keep the children away. Adam's expression hardened. Did he threaten you personally? No, Delilah assured him. He offered a compromise. I sing at his saloon twice weekly and he leaves the school alone. Bastard, Adam muttered, then immediately apologized. Forgive my language. Despite everything, Delilah found herself smiling. I've heard worse, Adam. I did spend a night in a saloon, remember? His answering smile eased some of the tension in her shoulders. What will you do? Continue teaching, Delilah said firmly. I won't be blackmailed or intimidated. If parents stop sending their children, then I'll have failed. But at least I'll have tried. Adam nodded, approval evident in his gaze. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Giving in to Pritchard's demands once would only lead to more demands. Delilah hesitated, then asked the question that had been troubling her. Adam, why did you leave Boston? His expression closed immediately, shoulders stiffening. Pritchard mentioned that, did he? He suggested I should ask you, Delilah admitted. That I might find your protection less reassuring if I knew the truth. Adam was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on some point beyond the schoolroom walls. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. I was a lawyer in Boston. My father's firm. We represented wealthy clients, powerful interests. His jaw tightened. One case involved a factory where children as young as 8 worked 16-hour days, dangerous conditions. Children were being maimed, killed. Delilah's breath caught in her throat. How terrible! The factory owner was a major client, Adam continued. When workers tried to organize for safer conditions, he had them fired, blacklisted. Some were beaten. I discovered evidence that my father knew about the conditions, knew about the violence, and helped cover it up. His eyes, when they met hers, held a mixture of old pain and resolute conviction. I couldn't be part of it. I gathered evidence, took it to a journalist friend. You exposed them, Delilah realized. Adam nodded. The factory was eventually forced to improve conditions, but not before my father disowned me. The firm blacklisted me, and every respectable door in Boston closed in my face. His lips twisted in a humorless smile. I came west to start over. Found I had an aptitude for law enforcement rather than law practice. That's nothing to be ashamed of, Delilah said softly. You stood up for what was right, at great personal cost. Not everyone sees it that way, Adam replied. Pritchard knows only that I betrayed my family, my class. He thinks it makes me unreliable. I think it makes you honorable, Delilah countered firmly. And I'm not at all discomforted by your protection. Quite the opposite, in fact. Something in her tone, in the way she held his gaze without wavering, caused a flush to rise in Adam's face. For a moment, The schoolroom seemed charged with an energy that had nothing to do with Pritchard's threats. Then Adam cleared his throat, breaking the spell. "I should patrol the rest of the town," he said, moving toward the door. "Will you be all right here alone?" "Perfectly," Delilah assured him, though a part of her wished he would stay. "I have lessons to prepare for tomorrow." "Lock the door behind me," Adam instructed. "And remember, I'm just down the street if you need anything." After he had gone, Delilah found herself unable to focus on lesson preparation. Instead, her thoughts kept returning to Adam's story, to the quiet dignity with which he had recounted his fall from Boston society. He had sacrificed everything for a principle, for the welfare of children he didn't even know. The revelation deepened her respect for him, and she admitted to herself, intensified the growing attraction she felt toward the deputy marshal. The next morning, Delilah waited anxiously outside the workshop as the school hour approached, dreading the possibility that Pritchard's threats had already taken effect. Her fears proved groundless as, one by one, the students arrived, all 15, plus a new boy whose family had just moved to the area. "Looks like your school is growing, not shrinking," Martha observed smugly as she delivered her son Henry. "Walter Pritchard may control some people in this town, but not everyone, and certainly not the mothers who have seen their children excited about learning for the first time." The day progressed smoothly, with the children settling more quickly into routines. Delilah introduced new material, challenging the older students while ensuring the younger ones mastered basic skills. By the time she dismissed the class, she felt a growing confidence in her ability to make the school succeed despite Pritchard's opposition. As the children dispersed, Delilah noticed Adam leaning against a tree across the street, watching the proceedings with an expression that might have been pride. She raised a hand in greeting, and he touched the brim of his hat in response before continuing on his patrol. These small interactions became a pattern over the following days. Adam would appear at some point during school hours, ostensibly checking on all the businesses in town, but always finding a moment to exchange a few words with Delilah. Sometimes he would linger after school, helping her arrange the classroom for the next day or simply talking about the students' progress. Delilah found herself looking forward to these moments, to the quiet companionship that was developing between them. Adam was unlike any man she had known back east, straightforward yet thoughtful, strong yet gentle in his manner with her and with the children, who had taken to calling him Deputy Adam with a mixture of awe and affection. By the end of the second week, the school had grown to 20 students. Word had spread beyond Jordan Valley to outlying ranches, and several families had arranged for their children to board in town during the week to attend classes. Delilah's tuition income had reached a level that allowed her to purchase additional books and supplies, and even to set a little aside for future needs. Pritchard, for his part, had maintained an ominous silence. He made no further direct approaches to Delilah, but she occasionally glimpsed him watching the school from a distance, his expression unreadable. His continued interest made her uneasy, but with Adam's vigilant presence and the growing support of the community, she refused to let fear dictate her actions. On a crisp Saturday morning in early October, with the school closed for the weekend, Adam appeared at Delilah's door with an unexpected proposal. "I need to ride out to the Patterson ranch," he explained. "There's been trouble with rustlers in the area, and Tom Patterson has reported missing cattle. I thought you might like to come along. The ride would do you good after being cooped up in the schoolroom all week." Delilah hesitated only briefly. The prospect of spending several hours in Adam's company, away from the watchful eyes of Jordan Valley, was too tempting to resist. "I'd like that very much," she agreed. "Give me a few minutes to change." In her small room, Delilah donned her most practical skirt and a warm shirtwaist, grateful that Martha had supplied her with clothing suitable for various occasions. She braided her hair securely and added a bonnet to protect against the October sun. When she emerged, Adam was waiting with 2 horses, his own sturdy gelding and a gentle mare borrowed from the livery stable. "You do ride?" he asked belatedly, looking suddenly concerned. "Since childhood," Delilah assured him, accepting his assistance to mount. The side saddle was not ideal for a long ride, but she managed it with practiced ease. "My father believed all children should learn, regardless of gender." "A progressive man," Adam commented, swinging into his own saddle. "In some ways," Delilah agreed. Though he would have been horrified to see his daughter teaching in a frontier town. They rode out of Jordan Valley at an easy pace, following a well-worn trail that wound through sagebrush-covered hills toward the distant mountains. The day was perfect for riding, clear and cool, with a light breeze carrying the scents of autumn. After weeks confined to the town and schoolroom, Delilah reveled in the sense of freedom, in the vast open spaces that stretched to the horizon. "It's beautiful country," she observed as they paused atop a rise that offered a panoramic view of the valley below. "Different from Pennsylvania," Adam noted. "Very," Delilah agreed. "Less green, more dramatic. I never imagined such spaces existed until I traveled west." She turned to him. "Do you miss the East, Boston?" Adam considered the question. "I miss certain aspects of civilization," he admitted. "Libraries, theaters, concerts, but not the society, the constant awareness of status and appearance." He gestured toward the landscape. "Out here, a man is judged by his actions, not his family name or bank account. I find that liberating." "And yet you brought your education with you," Delilah observed. "Your sense of justice, your appreciation for culture." "As did you," Adam countered with a smile. "That's what makes Jordan Valley interesting, the mixing of elements. Eastern refinement meeting Western practicality. With luck and the right influences, the result might be something better than either alone." "Is that why you support the school so strongly?" Delilah asked. "Partly," Adam acknowledged. "And partly because I've seen what happens when people remain ignorant, easily manipulated by men like Pritchard." His expression darkened. "Knowledge is power, Delilah. The more your students know, the less likely they are to be controlled." They continued riding, the conversation flowing easily between topics, books they had read, places they had seen, experiences that had shaped them. Delilah found herself sharing stories of her childhood, of her parents' struggles to maintain the farm, of her determination to become a teacher, despite limited opportunities for women. Adam, in turn, spoke more openly about his years in Boston, about the privileged but constrained existence he had led there, and about his gradual disillusionment with the values his father had instilled. He described his journey west, the odd jobs he had taken before finding his place in law enforcement, and his hope to eventually become marshal of a larger territory. "You've built a respectable life here," Delilah observed, "despite everything you left behind." "It's a start," Adam agreed. "But there's still much I hope to accomplish." The way his eyes lingered on her face suggested that his aspirations might include more personal considerations. They reached the Patterson ranch by midday. Tom Patterson, a weathered man in his 50s with a direct manner, welcomed them cordially, particularly Delilah. "My grandchildren have been talking about you nonstop, Miss Lambert," he said as he served them coffee on the ranch house porch. "Even got my Toby reading books in his spare time, which I never thought I'd see." "Toby has a quick mind," Delilah replied honestly. "He grasps concepts faster than most of the older students." Patterson nodded with evident pride. Boy takes after his grandmother. She was a schoolteacher back in Missouri before we married. He turned to Adam. Now about these rustlers. Lost another 8 head last night. Tracks lead toward the canyon lands. The men discussed the cattle theft in detail, with Adam asking specific questions about timing, tracks, and possible suspects. Delilah listened with interest, impressed by Adam's methodical approach to the investigation. "I'll organize a proper search party," Adam promised as they prepared to depart. "We'll find who's responsible." As they rode back toward Jordan Valley, Delilah noticed Adam scanning the landscape with greater vigilance than during their outward journey. "Are you concerned the rustlers might still be in the area?" she asked. "It's possible," he acknowledged. "Though they likely drove the cattle far from here by now." He glanced at her. "I shouldn't have brought you. If there's danger, I'm not afraid," Delilah assured him. "And I've enjoyed the day immensely." Adam smiled, the worry in his eyes easing somewhat. "As have I. It's been a long time since I had such pleasant company on patrol." They rode in comfortable silence for a time, the afternoon sun warm on their backs. Then Adam reined his horse to an abrupt halt, his posture suddenly alert. "You see that dust cloud to the north?" he asked, pointing toward a distant disturbance on the horizon. Delilah narrowed her eyes, making out what appeared to be a small group of riders moving rapidly in their direction. "Who would that be?" "No one with honest business moving at that speed," Adam muttered. He scanned their surroundings quickly. "We need to get off this trail. Follow me." He led them at a brisk trot toward a cluster of large rocks and juniper trees that offered some concealment. Once they reached the shelter, Adam dismounted and helped Delilah down from her mare. "Stay here with the horses," he instructed, drawing his pistol and checking that it was loaded. "Keep out of sight." "What are you going to do?" Delilah asked, alarmed by his sudden seriousness. "Just going to have a look," Adam assured her. "It's probably nothing, but better safe than sorry." He moved stealthily toward a position that would give him a view of the trail while remaining concealed. Delilah held the horse's reins, her heart beating rapidly as she waited. The sound of approaching hoofbeats grew louder. From her position, Delilah could see Adam crouching behind a boulder, his expression intent as he watched the riders approach. Suddenly, a shot rang out. Adam jerked back, then returned fire. More shots followed in quick succession. "Adam!" Delilah cried out, terrified that he had been hit. "Stay down," he shouted back. The riders Delilah could now see there were 4 of them had scattered at the first shot. One had dismounted and was using his horse as cover while firing toward Adam's position. Another was working his way around to the left, clearly trying to flank Adam. Without conscious thought, Delilah looped the horse's reins around a juniper branch and moved toward the rifle scabbard attached to Adam's saddle. Her father had insisted she learn to handle firearms on the farm, and although it had been years since she had fired a gun, the knowledge remained. The rifle came free easily. Delilah checked that it was loaded, then moved to a position where she could see the man attempting to circle behind Adam. Taking careful aim, she fired a shot that struck the ground near the man's feet. The unexpected gunfire from a new direction startled the would-be flanker. He dove for cover, firing wildly in Delilah's direction. She dropped to the ground as bullets splintered bark from a juniper tree above her head. Adam, alerted to the danger, shifted his position to protect her, firing with deadly accuracy at the man who had been shooting in Delilah's direction. The man cried out and fell, clutching his shoulder. "Enough," Adam bellowed. "Drop your weapons or the next shot won't be so merciful." There was a moment of tense silence, then the sound of a rifle hitting the dirt. "Don't shoot," a voice called out. "We're throwing down our guns." "Hands where I can see them," Adam ordered, maintaining his position. All of you." Slowly, the remaining men emerged from cover, hands raised. Adam motioned for Delilah to stay where she was as he cautiously approached the surrendering men, his pistol trained steadily on them. "Well, well," he said as he got a clear look at their faces. "Jake Simmons and the Harper brothers, I should have known." He kicked their weapons well out of reach. "Rustling Patterson's cattle, were you?" the man Adam had addressed as Simmons spat on the ground. "Got no proof of that, Mercer." "I will by the time I track where you've hidden those stolen head," Adam replied calmly. "For now, I've got you dead to rights for attempted murder of a law officer." He efficiently bound the men's hands with leather thongs, checking the wounded man's injury, a clean shot through the fleshy part of the shoulder that would be painful but not life-threatening. Only when all four were secured did Adam turn to Delilah, who had emerged from her position still clutching the rifle. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough with concern as he strode to her side. "I'm fine," she assured him, though her hands were shaking slightly from the aftermath of danger. "Are you hurt? I saw you jerk back when the first shot was fired." "Bullet grazed my arm," Adam admitted, showing a tear in his sleeve where blood had seeped through the fabric. "Nothing serious." Delilah set down the rifle and reached for his arm, examining the wound with gentle fingers. "It needs cleaning and bandaging," she declared. "It can wait until we get these men to town," Adam said firmly. "Though I must say, Miss Lambert, you continue to surprise me." "That was quite a shot you fired." "I grew up on a farm," Delilah reminded him. "My father believed everyone should know how to protect themselves and the livestock." Adam's expression held a mixture of admiration and something deeper that made Delilah's breath catch. "I'm grateful for your father's foresight," he said quietly. "You may have saved my life today." Their eyes held for a long moment, the connection between them intensifying in the aftermath of shared danger. Then one of the prisoners made a crude remark, breaking the spell. Adam's face hardened as he turned back to their captives. "We need to get these men to town." "Can you ride?" "Of course," Delilah replied, straightening her skirts and retrieving her bonnet, which had fallen off during the confrontation. The journey back to Jordan Valley was tense and uncomfortable. The wounded man complained constantly, while the others maintained a sullen silence. Adam kept the prisoners riding ahead, with Delilah beside him at the rear where he could protect her if necessary. "I'm sorry," he said quietly after they had been riding for some time. "This is not how I intended our day to end." "You have nothing to apologize for," Delilah assured him. "You couldn't have known we would encounter rustlers. Still, I should never have exposed you to such danger." "I'm not sorry it happened," Delilah said truthfully. "It was exhilarating in a way, to be useful in a crisis, to do something beyond teaching arithmetic and grammar." Adam studied her with renewed interest. "You're a remarkable woman, Delilah Lambert." The sincerity in his voice sent warmth spreading through her chest. "Thank you for saying so," she replied softly. "Though I think I'll stick to teaching as my primary occupation. Gunfights are a bit too exciting for regular indulgence." His laugh, sudden and genuine, lightened the tension of the journey. "A wise decision. Though I must say, if teaching ever fails to satisfy, you'd make a formidable deputy." Their arrival in Jordan Valley caused an immediate sensation. Adam marched the prisoners directly to the small jail, where he confined them in the two available cells, placing the Harper brothers in one and Simmons and the wounded man in the other. News of the confrontation spread rapidly through the town. By the time Adam had secured the prisoners and sent for the doctor to treat the wounded man, a crowd had gathered outside the jail. Martha was among them, rushing forward when she caught sight of Delilah. "My dear girl," she exclaimed, "are you hurt? We heard there was shooting." "I'm perfectly fine," Delilah assured her, "but Adam was grazed by a bullet. He needs medical attention." "I've already sent for Doc Wilson," Martha said. "He'll see to the deputy after he's treated the prisoner." She linked her arm through Delilah's. "Come to the hotel. You need a hot meal and a chance to rest after such an ordeal." Delilah glanced back at Adam, who was speaking with several townsmen about organizing a party to search for the stolen cattle. He caught her eye and nodded encouragingly. "Go with Martha," he called. "I'll come find you once things are settled here." At the hotel, Martha installed Delilah in a private corner of the dining room and brought her a plate of hot food and a cup of strong tea. "Now," the older woman said, settling across from her, "tell me everything. And don't leave out a single detail." Delilah recounted the events of the day, from the pleasant ride to the Patterson ranch through the confrontation with the rustlers. Martha listened with wide eyes, gasping at the most dramatic moments. "And you actually fired a rifle." She marveled when Delilah described her intervention. "I couldn't just hide while Adam was in danger," Delilah explained simply. "He needed help and I was able to provide it." Martha studied her with shrewd eyes. "You care for him," she observed. "It wasn't a question." Delilah felt a blush rising in her cheeks. "I admire him greatly," she acknowledged carefully. "He's been a good friend to me since my arrival." "Friend, is it?" Martha smiled knowingly. "I've seen how he looks at you, my dear, and how you look at him when you think no one's watching." Before Delilah could formulate a response, the hotel door opened and Adam himself entered, his left arm now properly bandaged. He scanned the room, his face lighting up when he spotted Delilah. Martha rose discreetly. "I'll just see about getting the deputy some dinner," she murmured, patting Delilah's hand before moving away. Adam took the vacated seat, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "The prisoners are secured," he reported. "Doc Wilson says Harper will recover, though he'll have a stiff shoulder for a while. Patterson and some of the other ranchers are forming a search party to find the stolen cattle at first light." "And you?" Delilah asked, noting the lines of fatigue around his eyes. "How is your injury?" "Just a scratch," Adam dismissed it. "Doc cleaned and bandaged it, said I was lucky." His gaze held hers intently. "Thanks to you." "I only did what was necessary," Delilah demurred. Adam reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "You were brave today," he said quietly. "Braver than many men I've known. And you kept your head in a dangerous situation. That's rare, Delilah." The sound of her name on his lips, the warmth of his hand on hers made her heart beat faster. "As did you," she replied. "You're good at your job, Adam. The people of Jordan Valley are fortunate to have you protecting them." A shadow crossed his face. "Not everyone sees it that way. Pritchard and his cronies have been pushing the town council to replace me with someone more, amenable to their interests." "They can't do that," Delilah protested. "You're appointed by the territorial governor, aren't you?" "Technically," Adam agreed. "But in practice, local opinion carries weight if the town council formally requests my removal." He shrugged. "The governor isn't likely to intervene in such a remote posting." "That's outrageous," Delilah declared, indignation rising within her. "After all you've done for this community." "It's the way of things out here," Adam said philosophically, "but today might change some minds. Capturing those rustlers will remind folks why they need a deputy who puts the law above personal interests." Martha returned with a heaping plate of food for Adam. "Eat," she instructed firmly. "Both of you. You've had enough excitement for one day." As they dined together in the warm, lamplit room, Delilah was acutely aware of the glances directed their way by other patrons. Their shared adventure had altered something fundamental in her relationship with Adam and in her standing within the community. She was no longer merely the new school teacher, but a woman who had proven her courage in a crisis. The realization was both empowering and unsettling. Back east, such notoriety would have been scandalous for a woman in her position. Here in Jordan Valley, she sensed it might actually enhance her authority, particularly with the parents of her more reluctant students. After the meal, Adam insisted on escorting Delilah back to her quarters behind the schoolroom. The evening had grown chilly, and he draped his coat around her shoulders despite her protests. "You've endured quite enough discomfort for one day on my account," he said firmly. "I won't have you catching cold as well." They walked slowly through the quiet streets, their shoulders occasionally brushing in a way that sent awareness shimmering through Delilah. At her door, Adam hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave. "Thank you," Delilah said, slipping his coat from her shoulders and returning it to him. "For everything today. Despite the danger, I enjoyed our ride immensely." "As did I," Adam admitted, "though next time I promise a less eventful excursion." "Next time," Delilah echoed, unable to keep a note of pleasure from her voice. Adam's smile was warm in the gathering darkness. "If you're willing, perhaps next Saturday. There's a place in the foothills I'd like to show you, a waterfall that few people know about." "I'd like that very much," Delilah replied softly. Adam's gaze dropped to her lips, and for a breathless moment Delilah thought he might kiss her. Instead, he took her hand and raised it gallantly to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that was both proper and somehow deeply intimate. "Good night, Delilah," he murmured. "Sleep well." "Good night, Adam," she replied, her skin tingling where his lips had touched. She watched him walk away, his tall figure silhouetted against the last light of evening, before entering her small quarters. Despite the day's danger and excitement, or perhaps because of it, Delilah felt more alive than she had in years, more connected to her own courage, and to the man who had witnessed it. The news of the rustlers' capture spread rapidly throughout Jordan Valley and the surrounding ranches. By Monday morning, when Delilah rang the school bell, her student count had increased to 23, with several new faces from outlying properties whose parents had previously been skeptical about the value of education. "Deputy Mercer says you're a real frontierswoman now, Miss Lambert," one of the older boys announced proudly during the morning lesson. "Says you can shoot better than half the men in the territory." "Deputy Mercer exaggerates," Delilah replied firmly, though she couldn't suppress a small smile. "Now, please turn to page 17 in your reader." The incident had unexpected repercussions beyond increased enrollment. Several mothers who had previously been polite but distant now sought Delilah out, inviting her to Sunday dinners or afternoon teas. The minister's wife asked her to help organize a Christmas pageant for the small church. Even some of the town's businessmen who had maintained neutrality in the unspoken conflict between Pritchard and the school now nodded respectfully when Delilah passed their establishments. Adam, too, found his position strengthened by the successful capture of the rustlers. The search party had recovered most of the stolen cattle, and evidence found at the rustlers' camp implicated them in several other thefts across the territory. The town council, which had been considering a motion to request Adam's replacement, tabled the discussion indefinitely. Throughout the week, Delilah caught glimpses of Adam as he went about his duties supervising the prisoners' transfer to the territorial jail in Boys, conferring with ranchers about additional security measures, mediating a dispute between neighboring properties. Each time their paths crossed, they exchanged smiles that carried the weight of their shared experience and the anticipation of Saturday's promised excursion. By the time Saturday arrived, Delilah had analyzed her feelings for Adam Mercer with the same methodical attention she applied to her teaching. The conclusion was inescapable. She was falling in love with him. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. She had come west to establish herself as an independent woman, to build a career based on her education and abilities. Romance had not figured in her plans, yet there was something about Adam that complemented rather than threatened her independence. He valued her courage, respected her intelligence, supported her professional ambitions. Unlike the young men who had courted her in Pennsylvania, he seemed to want her as a partner, not a possession. These thoughts occupied her as she prepared for their outing, selecting a practical riding outfit that Martha had helped her acquire after the previous weekend's adventure. The divided skirt was scandalously modern, but eminently more sensible for horseback riding than her previous arrangements. Adam arrived promptly at 9, leading the same 2 horses they had ridden before. His eyes widened appreciatively at the sight of Delilah's practical attire. "You look ready for adventure," he commented. "I decided that if I'm to be a proper frontierswoman, I should dress accordingly," Delilah replied lightly, accepting his assistance to mount. "I hope you don't disapprove." "On the contrary," Adam assured her, swinging into his own saddle. "Practicality trumps convention out here, especially when safety is concerned." They rode at a leisurely pace, following a different trail from the previous week. This one led upward into the foothills, winding through stands of ponderosa pine that provided welcome shade as the morning sun strengthened. "How far is this waterfall?" Delilah inquired after they had been riding for over an hour. "Not much farther," Adam promised. "Just over the next rise." "Listen, you can hear it already." Delilah tilted her head, catching the distant sound of rushing water. As they crested the hill, the landscape opened before them, revealing a narrow canyon cut into the mountainside. A stream cascaded down the rock face, creating a series of falls that glinted like silver in the sunlight before collecting in a clear pool at the bottom. "It's beautiful," Delilah breathed, reining her horse to a halt to better appreciate the view. "I discovered it my first year here," Adam said, dismounting and moving to help her down. "I come here sometimes when I need to think, to remind myself why I chose this life." They secured the horses near a patch of grass, then made their way down a narrow path to the pool. Adam had brought a simple picnic bread, cheese, apples, and a bottle of cider which they spread on a flat rock near the water's edge. The setting was idyllic, the air filled with the soothing sound of falling water and the occasional call of a bird. Delilah removed her hat, letting the gentle spray cool her face after the warm ride. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said sincerely. "It's like a hidden paradise." Adam watched her with a softness in his gaze that made her heart beat faster. "I've never brought anyone else," he admitted. It felt too personal. The implication of his words hung in the air between them. Delilah met his gaze steadily, acknowledging the significance of his choice to share this private retreat with her. "I'm honored by your trust," she said quietly. They ate in companionable silence for a time, occasionally remarking on the beauty of their surroundings or sharing observations about the week's events in Jordan Valley. It was only as they were finishing the last of the cider that Adam broached a more serious topic. "Pritchard has been unusually quiet this week," he noted, his expression thoughtful. "No further threats against the school, no attempts to undermine your position." "Perhaps he's reconsidered his opposition," Delilah suggested, though she didn't believe it herself. Adam shook his head. "More likely he's planning something. Walter Pritchard doesn't surrender easily, especially when his pride is involved." "What do you think he'll do?" Delilah asked, unable to keep a note of concern from her voice. "I'm not sure," Adam admitted, "but I want you to be careful. Don't go anywhere alone after dark. Keep the schoolroom door locked when you're teaching, and if anything seems amiss, anything at all, send word to me immediately." Delilah nodded, appreciating his concern while refusing to be intimidated by it. "I'll be vigilant," she promised. "But I won't live in fear, Adam. That would mean Pritchard has already won." "I know," Adam acknowledged with a rueful smile. "Your courage is one of the things I most admire about you. Just don't be reckless. There's a difference." "Like firing a rifle at rustlers," Delilah teased gently. "Exactly like that," Adam agreed, though his expression remained serious. "Though I thank God every day that you did." The intensity in his voice made Delilah's breath catch. Impulsively, she reached out and laid her hand over his where it rested on the rock between them. "As do I," she said softly. "I couldn't bear to see you hurt, Adam." His fingers intertwined with hers, strong and warm. "Delilah," he began, his voice roughened with emotion, but whatever he had been about to say was interrupted by a sudden rumble of thunder. They both looked up, startled to see dark clouds gathering rapidly over the mountains to the west. "A storm," Adam observed, his expression turning to concern. "It's moving fast. We should head back to town before it hits." They hastily packed the remains of their picnic and hurried back up the path to where the horses waited, now restless as they sensed the approaching weather. Adam helped Delilah mount, his hands lingering at her waist slightly longer than necessary before swinging into his own saddle. They rode swiftly, trying to outpace the storm, but the clouds moved with unnatural speed, driven by high winds that whipped through the trees and sent dust spiraling across the trail. The first heavy drops began to fall when they were still several miles from Jordan Valley. "There's a lined shack about half a mile ahead," Adam called over the rising wind. "We can wait out the worst of it there." They urged their horses to a faster pace, reaching the small cabin just as the skies opened in earnest. Adam dismounted quickly, leading both horses to a lean-to shelter attached to one side of the shack. Delilah slid from her saddle, already soaked despite their hurry. The lined shack was basic, but found a single room with a small stove, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, and a narrow cot against one wall. Adam worked quickly to light the stove with supplies stored in a bin beside it, while Delilah wrung water from her hair and clothing as best she could. "Here," Adam said, pulling a worn blanket from the cot and offering it to her. "You should get out of that wet jacket at least." Delilah accepted the blanket gratefully, turning her back to remove the sodden riding jacket and wrap the rough wool around her shoulders. The small stove was already radiating welcome heat in the confined space. "How long do these storms usually last?" she asked, moving closer to the warmth. "It's hard to say," Adam replied, removing his own wet coat and hanging it near the stove to dry. "Mountain storms can be unpredictable. Could pass in an hour, or we might be here until morning." The possibility of spending the night alone with Adam in this isolated cabin sent a flush of heat through Delilah that had nothing to do with the stove. Propriety dictated that she should be concerned about appearances, about what the townspeople would think if they knew. Yet in that moment, all she felt was a strange sense of rightness, as if the storm had merely accelerated an inevitable convergence. Adam seemed to sense her thoughts, his blue eyes darkening as they met hers across the small room. "I'm sorry about the circumstances," he said quietly, "but I'm not sorry to have this time with you, away from the town's watchful eyes." "Nor am I," Delilah admitted, her voice barely audible above the drumming of rain on the cabin roof. Adam crossed to her then, his movements deliberate but unhurried, giving her every opportunity to retreat if she wished. Delilah held her ground, her heart pounding as he came to stand before her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I've wanted to tell you," he began, his voice low and intent, "how much you've come to mean to me, Delilah. These past weeks, watching you build your school, seeing your courage and determination, I've never met anyone like you." Delilah's throat tightened with emotion. "Nor I you," she replied softly. "You've shown me kindness from the first, Adam, respect, understanding. Things I never expected to find when I stepped off that stagecoach." Adam raised a hand to her face, his fingers gentle as they traced the curve of her cheek. "I think I've been waiting for you all my life," he confessed, "even before I knew you existed." The simple truth in his words broke something open inside Delilah, a barrier she hadn't even realized she had maintained. "Adam," she whispered, leaning into his touch. It was all the invitation he needed. Adam lowered his head, his lips finding hers in a kiss that began with exquisite gentleness, but quickly deepened as Delilah responded, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. The blanket slipped from her shoulders, forgotten as Adam's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. Time seemed to suspend as they stood locked in that first embrace, the storm raging outside while something equally powerful and elemental surged between them. When they finally parted, both breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if to contain overwhelming emotion. "I love you," he said simply. "I should wait to tell you, court you properly as you deserve, but life is uncertain and I want you to know." Delilah's heart soared at his declaration. "I love you too," she replied, the words coming easily, naturally. "I think I began falling in love with you the moment you carried me out of that cellar." A smile curved Adam's lips. "Not the most romantic beginning," he observed wryly. "On the contrary," Delilah countered, her own smile matching his. "You were my hero that day, Adam Mercer. My knight breaking down the door to rescue the damsel in distress." "You're hardly a damsel in distress," Adam pointed out, his thumbs tracing gentle circles at her waist. "More like a warrior queen temporarily inconvenienced." Delilah laughed, delighted by his perception. "Perhaps we rescued each other in different ways." "Perhaps we did," Adam agreed softly, before capturing her lips again in a kiss that expressed all the longing and tenderness that words could not contain. Outside, the storm continued unabated, but within the small cabin, Delilah and Adam created their own sanctuary of warmth and newfound love, talking quietly of their pasts, their hopes for the future, and the unexpected journey that had brought them together in this remote corner of the West. By mutual agreement, they maintained the proprieties despite their confessions of love. Adam insisted on taking the hard wooden chair for himself, leaving the cot for Delilah when they finally succumbed to exhaustion. Yet there was an intimacy in their shared vigil, in the knowledge of feelings now openly acknowledged, that made the humble line shack seem like the most romantic setting imaginable. The storm passed during the night, leaving a washed and gleaming landscape when they emerged at dawn. The ride back to Jordan Valley was filled with a new awareness, with exchanged glances and subtle touches that spoke volumes about their changed relationship. They arrived in town as the church bell was ringing for Sunday service, drawing curious stares from early risers who noted their rumpled appearance and the fact that they had clearly spent the night away from town. Adam escorted Delilah directly to her quarters behind the schoolroom, aware that speculation would already be spreading. "I'll speak to Reverend Williams this morning," he said as they stood at her door. "Ask his permission to court you formally. It won't silence all the gossip, but it will establish my honorable intentions." "Are you certain?" Delilah asked, touched by his consideration for her reputation. "We've known each other such a short time." "I've never been more certain of anything," Adam assured her, his gaze steady on hers. Unless you feel it's too soon. No, Delilah replied honestly. My heart is decided, Adam. I just want to be sure you won't regret acting so quickly. In answer, Adam drew her into his arms for one more brief, tender kiss. The only regret I could have would be in waiting when I know what I want, he murmured against her lips. And what I want, Delilah Lambert, is to build a life with you. With that declaration to sustain her, Delilah watched him stride away toward the church, her heart full to bursting with newfound happiness. Reverend Williams, a pragmatic man well accustomed to the realities of frontier life, received Adam's request to court Delilah with approving enthusiasm. By Sunday afternoon, the entire town was aware of the deputy marshal's formal intentions toward the schoolteacher, effectively transforming what might have been scandalous gossip about their night away into romantic speculation about wedding dates. Pritchard, predictably, was the exception. News of Adam and Delilah's courtship seemed to reignite his smoldering resentment. The saloon owner began a subtle campaign to undermine them both, spreading rumors that called into question Delilah's virtue and Adam's judgment. Pay it no mind, Martha advised when Delilah expressed concern about the whispers. Pritchard's influence is waning. The rustler's capture, the school's success, and now your courtship with Adam, all of it makes our deputy look like the hero he is, and Pritchard can't stand it. Despite Martha's reassurance, Delilah remained uneasy. She had learned enough about Walter Pritchard to know he wouldn't accept defeat without a fight. His quiet resistance to the school had been concerning. His opposition to her relationship with Adam might prove dangerous. Her fears proved justified the following Thursday evening. Delilah had stayed late at the schoolroom, preparing lessons for the next day, when a noise at the window startled her. Before she could investigate, the front door burst open to reveal two men with bandanas covering the lower half of their faces. "Evening, Miss Lambert," the taller one drawled, pointing a pistol directly at her. "Mr. Pritchard would like a word with you." Delilah's blood ran cold, but she forced herself to remain outwardly calm. "Mr. Pritchard knows where to find me if he wishes to speak with me," she replied steadily. "During normal business hours and without firearms." The shorter man chuckled unpleasantly. "Ain't you a cool one? No wonder Mercer's so taken with you." He gestured with his gun. "This ain't a request, lady. You're coming with us." Delilah's mind raced, assessing her options. Adam was out on patrol, possibly miles from town. The school was isolated enough that screaming would likely go unheard. Her own rifle was in her private quarters, inaccessible from the classroom. "At least allow me to get my shawl," she said, playing for time. "It's in my room." "Larson, go with her," the taller man instructed his companion. "Make sure she don't try nothing funny." The shorter man, Larson, gestured for Delilah to lead the way to her quarters. Once inside the small room, Delilah moved toward the hook where her shawl hung, deliberately placing herself near the washstand where she kept a heavy ceramic pitcher. As Larson glanced around the room with crude curiosity, Delilah seized the pitcher and swung it with all her strength. It connected with his head with a satisfying crack, sending him staggering. Before he could recover, she had snatched his pistol and was pointing it at his chest. "Don't move," she ordered, her voice surprisingly steady despite her racing heart. Larson froze, blood trickling from a gash on his temple where the pitcher had struck. "You broke my head," he said incredulously. "And I'll put a bullet in your chest if you take one step toward me," Delilah promised, gesturing with the pistol. "Now move back into the classroom, slowly." In the main room, the taller man was becoming impatient. "Larson, what's taking so long?" he called. "We have a situation, Pete," Larson replied weakly, as Delilah prodded him forward at gunpoint. Pete's eyes widened in shock as he took in the scene, his partner bleeding and disarmed. The schoolteacher looking grimly determined as she held the pistol with obvious familiarity. "Drop your weapon," Delilah instructed, keeping Larson between herself and Pete as a shield. "Now." For a tense moment, Pete seemed to consider his options. Then, with a muttered curse, he placed his pistol on a student's desk. "Pritchard didn't say nothing about you being dangerous," he complained. "A serious oversight on his part," Delilah agreed coldly. "Now, both of you, hands behind your backs." Using twine from her desk drawer, Delilah bound the men's wrists, forcing Pete to kneel while she did so to minimize any risk of him overpowering her. All the while, her mind was calculating the safest course of action. She couldn't march two prisoners through town alone, even at gunpoint. But leaving them bound in the schoolroom while she fetched help carried its own risks. The decision was taken from her when Adam's voice called from outside. "Delilah, are you still here? I saw the light." Relief flooded through her. "Adam, in here. I need help." The door flew open, Adam's hand already on his pistol as he assessed the situation in one comprehensive glance. His expression hardened at the sight of the bound men, at the blood on Larson's temple, at the gun in Delilah's steady hand. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, crossing to her side. "No," Delilah assured him. "They tried to abduct me. On Pritchard's orders, they said." Adam's face darkened with fury. "Did they now?" He turned to the captured men. "Is that true? Did Pritchard send you?" Pete maintained a sullen silence, but Larson, perhaps concussed from Delilah's blow, was more forthcoming. "Said to bring her to the saloon," he mumbled. "Said he'd pay $50. "Shut up, you fool," Pete hissed. "For what purpose?" Adam pressed, his voice dangerously quiet. Larson shrugged as best he could with his hands bound. "Didn't say, just wanted her brought to him. Tonight." Adam's jaw clenched. "This time he's gone too far," he said grimly. "Attempted kidnapping is a serious charge even for Walter Pritchard." He took the pistol gently from Delilah's hand. "I'll take these two to the jail, then I'm paying Pritchard a visit." "I'm coming with you," Delilah declared. Adam shook his head firmly. "No, I want you to go to Martha's. Stay there until I come for you." "This concerns me directly," Delilah protested. "I have a right to confront the man who ordered my abduction." "And I have a responsibility to keep you safe," Adam countered. "Please, Delilah, let me handle this my way." Something in his expression, a barely contained rage, a protectiveness that bordered on desperation, made Delilah relent. "Very well," she agreed reluctantly, "but promise me you won't do anything rash." "I'll uphold the law," Adam said, his voice hard as flint. "Nothing more, nothing less." After securing the prisoners in the small jail, Adam strode purposefully toward the Golden Spur Saloon, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. The saloon was busy, the piano player pounding out a lively tune as cowboys and townsmen drank and played cards. A hush fell over the room as Adam entered, his expression forbidding as he surveyed the crowd. "Where's Pritchard?" he demanded. One of the barmaids gestured toward the office door. "In there, deputy, but he said he wasn't to be disturbed." "Oh, he'll make an exception for me," Adam assured her grimly, crossing to the office and throwing the door open without knocking. Walter Pritchard looked up from his desk, irritation at the interruption quickly turning to wariness as he recognized his visitor. "Deputy Mercer," he said, leaning back in his chair with forced casualness. "What can I do for you this evening?" "You can explain why you sent two men to kidnap Miss Lambert," Adam replied coldly, remaining in the doorway where the entire saloon could witness the confrontation. Pritchard's face betrayed nothing. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Your men are in my jail," Adam informed him. "Larson is quite talkative with a head wound. Says you offered $50 to bring Miss Lambert to you tonight." A flicker of unease crossed Pritchard's florid features, quickly masked. "Larson is a drunk and a liar. If he used my name in some harebrained scheme, that's hardly my responsibility." "We both know that's not true," Adam said, his voice carrying clearly to the now silent saloon patrons. "This isn't the first time you've targeted Miss Lambert. It is, however, the last." Pritchard rose from his chair, his bulk imposing despite the desk between them. "Are you threatening me, Mercer?" "I'm informing you that Miss Lambert has filed charges against your men for attempted kidnapping," Adam replied evenly. "And against you as the one who ordered it. You have no proof I was involved," Pritchard scoffed. "A witness statement is proof," Adam countered. "And I've sent for the circuit judge. He'll be here within the week to hear the case." Fear finally broke through Pritchard's bluster. "Now, wait a minute, Mercer. There's no need to involve Judge Matthews. I'm sure we can settle this like reasonable men." "The time for that has long passed," Adam stated flatly. "You've harassed and threatened Miss Lambert since the day she arrived. You imprisoned her in your cellar. Now you've attempted to abduct her by force. These aren't matters for private settlement." Pritchard's expression turned ugly. "You self-righteous bastard. You're no better than me. We both know what you did back east, betraying your own father, destroying your family's reputation." He sneered. "At least I'm honest about what I am." "The difference between us, Pritchard," Adam replied with deadly calm, "is that I can face myself in the mirror each morning without shame. Can you say the same?" The saloon owner's face purpled with rage. With surprising speed for such a large man, he yanked open a desk drawer and pulled out a derringer. "Get out of my establishment," he snarled. Adam didn't flinch, didn't reach for his own weapon. "Put that away before you make things worse for yourself," he advised. "Threatening a law officer is another charge to add to the list." "I said get out," Pritchard shouted, raising the small pistol. What happened next unfolded with nightmarish clarity. Adam's hand moved toward his holster, but before he could draw, Pritchard fired. The shot went wide, splintering the doorframe inches from Adam's head. In the next instant, Adam had his own weapon out and leveled. "Drop it, Pritchard," he ordered. "Last warning." Instead, Pritchard aimed again, his face contorted with hatred. Adam fired first, the report of his pistol deafening in the confined space. Pritchard staggered backward, the derringer falling from his suddenly nerveless fingers as a dark stain spread across the front of his shirt. "You shot me," he gasped, clutching at his chest as he collapsed back into his chair. "You didn't leave me a choice," Adam replied grimly, holstering his weapon and moving swiftly to Pritchard's side. "Someone fetch Doc Wilson." He called over his shoulder to the stunned onlookers crowding the office doorway. Despite Adam's immediate efforts to stem the bleeding, it was clear the wound was severe. Pritchard's breathing grew labored, his eyes glazing with shock. "Never thought you'd actually." "Do it," he wheezed, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "I didn't want to," Adam told him honestly, "but I couldn't let you hurt anyone else." Pritchard's gaze focused briefly, a strange lucidity coming into his eyes. "She's changed you," he observed, "made you decisive." A rattling cough shook his frame. "Maybe that's not so bad." They were his last words. By the time Dr. Wilson arrived, Walter Pritchard was beyond medical help. The shooting was ruled justified self-defense, after multiple witnesses confirmed that Pritchard had fired first and was preparing to fire again when Adam responded. The two men who had attempted to kidnap Delilah were sentenced to 6 months of hard labor by the circuit judge, who arrived as promised the following week. For Delilah, the aftermath of these events brought a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Pritchard had been a cruel man who had caused her considerable suffering, yet she could take no joy in his death. Adam, too, too, was solemn in the days following the shooting, carrying the weight of having taken a life even in the line of duty. "I keep thinking there might have been another way," he confessed to Delilah as they sat on the porch of his small house one evening in late October. "Some approach that could have ended differently." "You did everything you could," Delilah assured him, her hand warm in his. "Pritchard made his own choices, Adam. You can't hold yourself responsible for them." Adam squeezed her fingers gratefully. "Your clarity helps, you know, your moral certainty. It's one of the many things I love about you." In the month since Pritchard's death, Jordan Valley had undergone subtle but significant changes. The Golden Spur Saloon had passed to Maggie, who had worked there for years and knew the business intimately. Under her management, the establishment became less rowdy, with no upstairs girls and a strict policy against excessive drunkenness. The town council, freed from Pritchard's influence, had finally approved funding for an official school building, to be constructed in the spring. Until then, Delilah continued teaching in Martha's workshop, her student count now up to 30 with a waiting list for the new term. Adam had received a letter from the territorial governor commending his handling of both the Rustlers and the Pritchard situation, with an offer of promotion to marshal of a larger district if he wished. He had not yet replied, wanting to discuss the opportunity with Delilah before making any decision. "I've been thinking," Adam said now, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. "About the future, our future." Delilah's heart quickened. "Have you decided about the governor's offer?" "Not yet," Adam admitted. "It would mean relocating to Boise, which has advantages: better resources, a proper courthouse, more deputies to supervise." He paused, his blue eyes meeting hers intently. "But it would also mean you giving up the school you've built here." "I won't ask that of you unless you're certain it's what you want." "Adam," Delilah said softly, "my work is important to me, yes, but you are my heart. Wherever you go, I want to be by your side." The love that blazed in his eyes at her words took her breath away. "Then marry me, Delilah," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Be my wife, my partner in all things. Help me build something worthwhile, whether here or in Boise or anywhere else life takes us." "Yes," Delilah whispered, tears of joy welling in her eyes. "Yes, I will marry you, Adam Mercer." He gathered her into his arms then, his kiss a promise of all they would share in the years to come: joy and challenge, adventure and contentment, the steady companionship of two souls perfectly matched in courage and conviction. They were married on Christmas Day, 1875, in the small Jordan Valley church, decorated with evergreen boughs and candles for the occasion. Martha, who had become like a mother to Delilah, wept openly as the couple exchanged their vows. Delilah's students attended en masse, the younger ones throwing flower petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy as the newlyweds departed the church. Adam had accepted the promotion to marshal of the Boise district, but with a condition that they remain in Jordan Valley until spring, allowing Delilah to complete the school year and oversee the transition to the new schoolhouse and teacher. The governor, impressed by their commitment to the community, had readily agreed. Their wedding night was spent in the small house that would be theirs for these final months in Jordan Valley, a beginning of intimacy and discovery that exceeded even their most hopeful anticipations. In each other's arms, they found a belonging neither had experienced before, a completion that made them stronger together than they had ever been apart. As they lay entwined in the quiet hours before dawn, Delilah rested her head on Adam's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I never imagined when I stepped off that stagecoach that I would find such happiness here," she murmured. "Nor I when I broke down that cellar door," Adam replied, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "It seems Pritchard unwittingly did us both a favor that day." "A strange thought," Delilah acknowledged, "but perhaps there's truth in it. Without his deception, I might never have come west. Without his cruelty, you might never have rescued me. And without his interference, we might never have discovered our strength, yours in standing against him, mine in finally confronting the kind of injustice I left Boston to escape." Adam pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Life takes unexpected turns, my love. I'm grateful that all of mine have led me to you." The years that followed brought both challenges and joys to Adam and Delilah Mercer. Boys proved to be a good home for them, offering Delilah the opportunity to help establish a proper women's academy, while Adam brought order and justice to a rapidly growing territory. Their first child, a son named James, arrived in the spring of 1877, followed by a daughter, Elizabeth, 2 years later. They never forgot Jordan Valley, returning often to visit Martha and the other friends they had made there. The school Delilah had started continued to thrive, eventually expanding to include a high school curriculum that prepared students for university education, an outcome that would have seemed impossible in the autumn of 1875. On one such visit, nearly 10 years after they had left, Delilah and Adam stood at the edge of town, their children playing nearby as they gazed at the community that had changed their lives. "You ever regret it?" Adam asked, his arm around his wife's waist. "Leaving teaching for motherhood and helping with my work." Delilah smiled up at him, the love in her eyes undimmed by the passing years. "I never left teaching," she corrected gently. "I simply found new students, new subjects to impart. Our children, the young deputies you mentor, the girls at the academy where I volunteer, all of them are an extension of what began in that workshop schoolroom." Adam's answering smile was tender as he drew her closer. "You always see the connections, the patterns that bind seemingly separate parts of life into a whole. It's one of your many gifts." "A gift I might never have recognized without you," Delilah replied, stretching up to kiss him softly. "You gave me the courage to see myself clearly, Adam. To build the life I truly wanted, not just the one I thought I should have." "We gave that to each other," Adam murmured against her lips, "and continue to every day." As the sun set over Jordan Valley, painting the landscape in shades of gold and crimson, Adam and Delilah Mercer stood wrapped in each other's arms, no longer the wary deputy and the stranded schoolteacher, but partners who had forged a love strong enough to overcome deception, violence, and the harsh demands of frontier life. Their story, which had begun with a locked cellar door and a dramatic rescue, had evolved into a shared journey of purpose and passion that neither could have imagined on that fateful day when their paths first crossed. In the end, it was not just Adam who had carried Delilah to safety, nor merely Delilah who had given Adam a reason to stand firm against injustice. They had saved each other in countless ways, large and small, creating together a life far richer than either could have built alone. And in that mutual salvation, they had found the deepest and most enduring love, a love that would continue to guide and sustain them through all the adventures still to come.